The vibration of my phone on the mahogany conference table sounded like a drill against my skull. It was the third time in 10 minutes. My assistant, Sarah, shot me a sympathetic look from the doorway, holding a stack of shipping manifests that needed my signature immediately. I was the chief operating officer of a logistics firm that moved perishable food across 3 states. If I stopped working for an hour, grocery shelves in Ohio would be empty by Tuesday. But to my mother, Patricia, I was just an ATM with a pulse. I silenced the call, flipping the phone face down. The screen flashed MOM one last time before going dark. I tried to refocus on the projected quarterly earnings, but the knot in my stomach, a familiar, cold weight I'd carried for 20 years, tightened. My brother Lucas was getting married in 4 days. And apparently, that was a national emergency requiring my total, undivided attention, and more importantly, my bank account. 10 minutes later, I stepped out into the hallway, the cool air conditioning of the office contrasting with the heat rising in my face. I dialed her back. Finally, her voice crackled through the receiver, not an ounce of relief, just pure accusation. Do you have any idea how embarrassing it is when I have to call my own daughter 5 times? The florist is threatening to pull the centerpieces, Olivia. The check didn't clear. The check didn't clear because the budget was $15,000, Mom, I said, keeping my voice low, pressing my forehead against the cool glass of the window overlooking the Chicago skyline. I deposited exactly $15,000 into the wedding account. If the florist wants more, that means someone went over budget. Oh, stop being so penny-pinching, she scoffed. Lucas decided the roses looked cheap. He upgraded to orchids. They have to be flown in from Hawaii. It's only an extra $4,000. Just transfer it. And while you're at it, we need to talk about the wine. I closed my eyes, visualizing my brother. Lucas. 36 years old, 2 years older than me, yet perpetually 16 in my parents' eyes. He was the idea man, the entrepreneur, who had started 5 businesses in 10 years, all of which failed spectacularly, and were quietly bailed out by my father's retirement fund or my savings. He drove a leased Porsche he couldn't afford and wore suits that cost more than my first car. What about the wine? I asked, though I already knew the answer. It was going to cost me money. Lucas found out that Emily's father, Mr. Sterling, is a connoisseur. We can't serve the house red, Olivia. It would be an insult. We need the 1998 vintage. It's crucial for Lucas's image. He's trying to impress his future father-in-law. Lucas is unemployed, Mom, I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. Buying expensive wine isn't going to change the fact that he doesn't have a job. There was a sharp intake of breath on the other end. He is between ventures. And you know how sensitive he is. You're always so hard on him. He's trying to build a future, and you're sitting there on your high horse with your fancy COO salary, begrudging your only brother a decent bottle of wine at his wedding. You have so much, Olivia. Why are you so greedy? Greedy. The word hung in the air, heavy and toxic. I looked down at my shoes. They were sensible flats, 2 years old. I drove a Honda. I lived in a modest apartment so I could maximize my savings and investment portfolio. Meanwhile, I paid my parents' mortgage because Dad's pension wasn't stretching far enough. I paid for Lucas's lawyer when he got a DUI last year. I paid for the new roof on their house. I'm not greedy, Mom. I'm tired. I've already put $40,000 into this wedding. That was my limit. It's family, she shrieked, her voice rising to that pitch that used to make me cower as a child. You do this for family. Emily's father is a billionaire real estate mogul. If this wedding goes well, he might invest in Lucas's new tech startup. This isn't just a party, Olivia, it's an investment in your brother's future. Don't you want him to succeed? Or are you jealous? I'm sending $5,000, I said, my voice flat. That's it. For the flowers and the wine. Do not ask me for another cent. 10, she countered instantly. We need 10 to cover the upgraded menu too. Lucas wants lobster thermidor instead of chicken. I have to go to a meeting. Transfer the money by noon, Olivia. Don't make me call your father and tell him you're trying to sabotage his son's big day. The line went dead. I stood there in the hallway, clutching the phone until my knuckles turned white. I wasn't a person to them. I wasn't a daughter who needed love or support. I was a resource. I was the provider, the safety net, the one who cleaned up the messes so the golden child could shine. I transferred the money. $10,000. I watched the balance in my savings account drop, a number that represented months of late nights, skipped vacations and skipped meals. I did it because I was conditioned to do it. Because the alternative was a guilt trip so severe it felt like physical pain. But as I walked back into the boardroom, adjusting my blazer, I felt something shift inside me. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was exhaustion. A deep, bone-weary exhaustion that whispered, this cannot go on. I didn't know it then, but that transfer would be the last time they ever successfully manipulated me. I sat down at the head of the table, looked at my team, and forced a smile. Let's get back to work, I said. We have a deadline. Outside, the sky was turning a bruised purple, a storm gathering over the city. It was fitting. A storm was coming for my family, too. They just didn't know I was the one who would bring the thunder. To understand why I transferred that $10,000 without screaming, you have to understand the history. You have to understand the hook that was embedded in my lip, the line my mother had been tugging on since I was 5 years old. The narrative in the Ellis household was simple: Lucas was destined for greatness, and I was destined to help him get there. Lucas was the sun, burning bright and volatile. I was the gravity that kept him from flying off into space. It wasn't just small things. It was everything. I sat in my car that evening, the rain drumming against the roof, unable to bring myself to start the engine. My mind drifted back 5 years. That was the first major betrayal, the one I had plastered over with denial because the truth was too painful to look at directly. I was 29 then. I had just bought my first condo, a beautiful, sun-drenched place in Lincoln Park. It was my sanctuary. I had saved for 7 years for the down payment. 3 months after I moved in, my father, Robert, called me. He was crying. My father never cried. We're going to lose the house, Livy, he sobbed. I made some bad investments. They're foreclosing in 30 days. The house. The Victorian home where we grew up, the one my grandmother had left to the family. It was the only tangible legacy we had. How much? I had asked, my heart hammering. $80,000 in arrears. Plus penalties. I didn't have $80,000 cash. But I had equity. And I had a salary. Sell your condo, my mother had said the next day, her eyes red-rimmed but her voice steady. We'll pay you back when the market turns. And listen, Olivia, when we pass on, the house goes to you. We've discussed it. Lucas will get the business assets, but the house, that will be your inheritance. It's worth $500,000. Think of it as an investment. I sold my condo. I moved back into a rental studio. I paid off their arrears. 2 weeks later, I saw photos on Facebook. Lucas was in Italy. Positano. Staying at a 5-star resort with his then-girlfriend. How can he afford that? I asked my mother, shaking. Oh, he won a contest, she lied. I knew she was lying because her left eyelid twitched. And besides, he needed a break. He's been so stressed about his startup. I swallowed the rage then. I swallowed it because they promised me the house. The house is mine, I told myself. I'm securing my future inheritance. Back in the present, inside my rain-streaked car, my phone pinged. A text from Aunt Beatrice. Beatrice was my mother's younger sister, the black sheep of the family because she refused to dye her gray hair, and refused to tolerate my mother's nonsense. We rarely spoke, but she was the only one who ever looked at me with something other than expectation. Text from Aunt Beatrice: "Are you coming to the rehearsal dinner tomorrow?" Me: "Yes. Just wired the money for the wine. Mom said it was an emergency." Aunt Beatrice: "Honey, you need to know something before you walk into that room. I was over at your parents' house yesterday helping with the seating chart." 3 dots danced on the screen. My heart rate kicked up. Aunt Beatrice: "I saw the paperwork on the desk. They didn't just refinance the house, Olivia. They put Lucas's name on the deed last week. It's his wedding gift. They transferred the title." The air left my lungs. It wasn't just the betrayal of the promise. It was the theft of my sacrifice. I had sold my home to save that house, under the written contract of their word that it would be mine. And they had given it to Lucas. But Beatrice wasn't done. Aunt Beatrice, and one more thing. You know Grandma's pearl necklace? The one with the sapphire clasp? The one she specifically left to you in her will, but your mom said she was keeping safe in her safe deposit box. I typed back, my fingers trembling. Yes. What about it? Aunt Beatrice: "Patricia sold it 3 months ago. To a pawn shop in the city. She used the money to buy that Rolex Lucas has been wearing. She told the jeweler it was an old family heirloom nobody wanted anymore." I dropped the phone. It clattered into the cup holder. Grandma's pearls. They weren't worth a fortune, maybe $3,000 or $4,000, but they were mine. Grandma had clasped them around my neck when I was 12 and whispered, "For when you're a CEO, my little shark." She was the only one who saw my ambition as a virtue, not a service to be exploited. My mother had sold my grandmother's love to buy my brother a watch. I sat there for a long time. The rain intensified, blurring the streetlights into streaks of neon blood. I didn't cry. That was the strange part. I expected to weep, to scream, to pound the steering wheel. But instead, a cold clarity washed over me. It started in my toes, and worked its way up, freezing my heart into a block of ice. They didn't love me. It sounds simple, doesn't it? But realizing it is like surviving a plane crash. You walk away from the wreckage of your childhood, looking back at the burning fuselage, and you realize you were the only passenger. I picked up the phone. I didn't reply to Beatrice. I didn't call my mother to scream. I opened my banking app. I opened my email. I started taking screenshots. If they wanted to treat our relationship like a transaction, I would finally start acting like a businesswoman. I put the car in gear. I had a rehearsal dinner to attend. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't going there to please them. I was going there to gather intel. The rehearsal dinner was held at Le Jardin, a French bistro that was aggressively overpriced and dimly lit to hide the small portion sizes. My parents had rented out the entire mezzanine. I arrived 10 minutes late, wearing a charcoal gray dress that I knew made me look severe. I didn't care. I wasn't there to be decorative. The room was buzzing with the forced laughter of 2 families trying to merge. On one side, the Sterlings, Emily's family. They looked like old money, understated cashmere and polite, guarded smiles. Mr. Sterling, the real estate tycoon, sat at the head of the table, looking bored. On the other side, my family. My mother was wearing a gown that was too sparkly for a Thursday night, holding a glass of champagne that I had paid for. My father was laughing too loudly at Mr. Sterling's mild jokes. And then there was Lucas. He sat in the center, the king of his own imaginary kingdom. He was wearing the Rolex. I stared at it from across the room. The steel glinted under the chandelier. That's Grandma, I thought. That's her love, melted down and strapped to his wrist. Olivia. You made it. Emily chirped. She was a sweet girl, barely 24, with wide, doe-like eyes. I actually felt sorry for her. She had no idea she was marrying a parasite. She thought Lucas was a venture capitalist. "Hello, Emily. You look beautiful," I said, and I meant it. "Come sit." She patted the empty chair next to her. "Lucas was just telling Daddy about your family's business empire." I froze as I took my seat. Family business empire. We owned a failing hardware store that Dad sold 10 years ago, and I was a COO for a completely unrelated logistics corporation. I looked at Lucas. He was already flushed with wine, his eyes glassy. "Yeah," Lucas said, waving a hand dismissively. "You know, Livy here runs the operations side of things for me. She's great at the boring stuff. Paperwork, logistics. Keeps the trains running on time so I can focus on the big picture strategy." I felt the blood drain from my face. He was claiming my job. He was claiming my career as a subsidiary of his non-existent empire. Mr. Sterling looked at me with renewed interest. "Is that so? Lucas said he owns the logistics firm." "I didn't realize you worked for him, Olivia." I opened my mouth to correct him, to say, "Actually, I run a Fortune 500 supply chain, and Lucas hasn't filed a W-2 in 6 years." But under the table, a hand clamped onto my wrist. Hard. It was my mother. She had leaned over, her smile fixed and terrifying. "Don't," she hissed, barely moving her lips. "Don't you dare embarrass him. Not now. We are so close." I looked at her hand on my wrist. Her nails were manicured in a perfect French tip. The pressure was painful. I looked back at Mr. Sterling. "We collaborate," I said, the lie tasting like ash in my mouth. Lucas beamed, raising his glass. "To family. And to the merger of the Ellis and Sterling dynasties." Everyone cheered. My father clapped the loudest, looking at Lucas with adoring eyes. "That's my boy," he murmured. "Always thinking big." The dinner progressed in a blur of nausea. I watched them eat the filet mignon I paid for. I watched them drink the vintage wine I paid for. I watched Lucas charm Emily's mother with stories of vacations I had funded. Toward the end of the night, I went to the bar to get a sparkling water, needing a break from the suffocation. Lucas followed me. He leaned against the bar, loosening his tie. He smelled of expensive cologne and stale wine. "You look sour, sis," he slurred slightly. "Smile. It's a celebration." "I know about the house, Lucas," I said quietly. His smile didn't waver, but his eyes hardened. "What house?" "Mom and Dad's house. The one I saved from foreclosure. The one they promised to me. I know they signed the deed over to you last week." Lucas chuckled, a low, ugly sound. He took a sip of his bourbon. "Oh, that. Yeah. Well, Livy, be realistic. You're a spinster. You live in a shoebox. What do you need a 4-bedroom Victorian for? I'm starting a family. I'm the one carrying on the name. It's only right. I paid for it," I whispered. "I sold my home for it." He stepped closer, invading my personal space. The charm was gone, replaced by the sneer of a bully who knows he's protected by the teacher. "You paid for it because that's your job," he said, his voice dropping to a whisper so the Sterlings wouldn't hear. "You're the wallet, Olivia. That's all you are. Nobody likes a stingy wallet. You think Mom and Dad love you for your personality. You're cold. You're boring. You're a workaholic. I'm the one who brings them joy. You just bring the checks." He poked me in the shoulder. Hard. "So stop whining about the house. Be a good sister, pay the bill for tonight, and look happy in the photos. Or everyone will see what a jealous, bitter hag you really are." He patted my cheek, then turned around and walked back to the table, arms spread wide, shouting, "Who wants dessert?" I stood there, frozen. "You're the wallet." The words echoed in my head. He had said the quiet part out loud. He had confirmed everything I suspected but was too afraid to admit. I looked at my family. My mother was fawning over Emily's ring, a ring I suspected was bought with money borrowed against the very house I saved. My father was dozing off, content. Lucas was the king. And I was the servant who had been allowed to sit at the table, just long enough to pay the tab. I signaled the waiter. "Check, please." I paid the bill. It was $4,000. I signed the receipt with a steady hand. I tipped the waiter 25% because it wasn't his fault my family was trash. Then I walked over to the table. "I'm leaving," I said. "Already?" Mom frowned. "We haven't cut the cake. It looks bad if the sister of the groom leaves early." "I have a headache," I said. "I'll see you tomorrow." I walked out into the cool night air. The rain had stopped, leaving the pavement slick and black. The snap hadn't happened yet. Not fully. That was just the crack in the dam. The dam would burst the next morning. But as I drove home, I didn't go to my apartment. I drove to my office. I unlocked the door to the darkened building, went to my desk, and pulled out a fresh legal pad. I wrote 3 headings at the top of the page. 1. Assets. 2. Liabilities. 3. Termination strategy. If I was just a business to them, then I was going to liquidate. The next morning, the day before the wedding, the sky was a brilliant, mocking blue. I hadn't slept. I had spent the night pulling up every transfer, every check, every loan I had given my parents over the last decade. The total was staggering. $215,000. That included the mortgage payoff, the loans for Lucas's businesses, the medical bills, the cars, the vacations. I printed it all out. A stack of paper an inch thick. At 10 a.m., I drove to my parents' house. I needed to hear them say it. I needed one final confirmation before I pushed the nuclear button. I guess, deep down, a tiny part of me, the 5-year-old girl who just wanted her mommy to hug her, was hoping they would deny it. Hoping they would say, "Lucas is drunk and lying. Of course the house is yours. We love you." I walked in without knocking. They were in the kitchen. The house smelled of coffee and denial. "Olivia," Mom said, looking up from a pile of wedding favors she was assembling. "Good, you're here. We have a crisis. The photographer just called. He wants an extra $2,000 because Lucas wants him to stay until 2 a.m. for the after-party shots." She extended her hand, palm up. Expecting the credit card. I ignored her hand. I placed the stack of papers on the kitchen table with a heavy thud. "What is this?" Dad asked, looking up from his newspaper. "That," I said, my voice calm, "is a ledger of every dollar I have given this family in 10 years. $215,000. Mom rolled her eyes. "Oh God. Are we doing this again? The scorekeeping. It's so unbecoming, Olivia." "I know about the house, Mom," I said. The room went silent. The only sound was the refrigerator humming. Mom stopped tying a ribbon on a favor box. She exchanged a quick look with Dad. He shifted in his chair, suddenly finding the sports section very interesting. "I don't know what you're talking about," she said, but her voice lacked its usual conviction. "I saw the deed transfer," I lied. "It's public record." It wasn't yet, but she didn't know that. "And I know about Grandma's pearls. The ones you sold to buy Lucas's watch." Mom slammed the ribbon down. She stood up, her face flushing an angry red. "How dare you spy on us? We are your parents." "You promised me the house," I said, my voice trembling slightly despite my best efforts. I sold my condo to save this roof. You looked me in the eye and swore it was my inheritance. Plans change, she shouted. Lucas is getting married. He needs security. You're a single woman, Olivia. You make good money. You can buy another house. Lucas needs a head start. He's going to have children. This house needs to stay in the family name. I carry the family name too, I said. It's different. Dad chimed in, finally looking up. He's the son. It's tradition, Livy. You have to understand. A man needs to provide a home. He isn't providing it. I yelled, finally losing my cool. I provided it. Me. I bought this house for him. Lower your voice, Mom hissed. The neighbors. She walked around the table and stood in front of me. She didn't look ashamed. She looked annoyed. Like I was a stain on her perfect tablecloth. Look, she said, her voice dropping to that icy tone she used when she wanted to cut deep. You are being selfish. Again. Just like when you were a child. You always wanted everything for yourself. I wanted fairness, I said. Life isn't fair, she snapped. Here is the reality, Olivia. Lucas is the future of this family. You are the support system. That is your role. Accept it. She picked up the stack of papers, my evidence of love and sacrifice, and dropped them into the trash can. Now, she said, dusting off her hands. We have a wedding to finish paying for. If you aren't going to help, then get out of my way. Honestly, at this point, with this attitude, the greatest gift you could give your brother for his wedding is you vanishing from this family. Forever. There it was. The sentence that severed the cord. Time seemed to slow down. I looked at her face. I looked for love. I looked for regret. I saw nothing but arrogance and entitlement. She truly believed I wouldn't leave. She believed I was so desperate for their crumbs of affection that I would swallow this, write the check for the photographer, and smile in the family photos. She was banking on my weakness. But she had forgotten where I got my strength. I looked at the trash can where my ledger lay. Then I looked at her. Okay, I said. The word was soft. Almost a whisper. Okay, she frowned, suspicious of the sudden surrender. You're right, I said. I've been causing too much drama. You want me to vanish? I'll vanish. Well, she huffed, smoothing her dress. I didn't mean literally disappear, Olivia. Just stop making this about you. Just pay the photographer and go get dressed. No, I said. You said vanish. I think that's a great idea. I turned around and walked toward the door. Olivia, she called after me. Where are you going? The photographer needs the card number. I'm sure Lucas can handle it, I said over my shoulder. He's the man of the house now, right? I walked out the front door. I got into my car. I didn't speed. I drove perfectly at the speed limit. I drove straight to the office of Arthur Vance, my personal attorney. When I sat down in his leather chair 10 minutes later, I didn't cry. My eyes were dry as desert sand. Olivia? Arthur asked, looking concerned. What's wrong? You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to cancel everything, I said. And I need to hire a forensic accountant. Today. Cancel what? The wedding, I said. And my relationship with my parents. Arthur took off his glasses. He pulled a legal pad toward him. Start from the beginning. No, I said. Start from the money. I want to know where every cent went. And I want to know how legally binding a verbal contract regarding real estate is in the state of Illinois. Because I'm going to burn their house down. Figuratively speaking. Arthur smiled. A sharp, predatory smile. I charge $400 an hour for arson. Worth every penny, I said. The snap was complete. The provider was dead. The auditor had arrived. The conference room at Vance and Associates was silent, save for the rhythmic tapping of keys from the forensic accountant, a sharp-eyed woman named Sarah. It had been 4 hours since I walked out of my parents' house. "You keep good records, Olivia," Sarah murmured, highlighting a line on the spreadsheet projected onto the wall. "Compulsively good." "I ran logistics," I said, sipping lukewarm coffee. "If you don't track it, it gets lost." "Well," Arthur Vance leaned forward, his expression grim. "We found something that wasn't lost. It was hidden." He slid a document across the mahogany table toward me. It was a loan application. A business loan for $500,000, taken out 6 months ago in the name of Ellis Ventures LLC. "I didn't co-sign this," I said, frowning. "I refused to fund Lucas's last startup." "Look at the guarantor signature," Arthur said. I looked. There at the bottom of the page was my name. Olivia Ellis. The loops of the O and the slant of the E were perfect. Terrifyingly perfect. "That's my signature," I whispered. "But I never signed this." "It's a forgery," Sarah confirmed. "A high-quality one, likely traced from one of the checks you sent them. But here's the kicker. Do you know what collateral they used to secure this loan?" I felt the blood drain from my face. "The house." "No," Sarah said. "The house was already leveraged to the hilt for the refinance. They used your assets. Specifically, they listed you as a silent partner and used your stock portfolio, which your father still had power of attorney over from when he managed it 10 years ago, as collateral." My vision blurred. He still had access. "You never revoked it," Arthur said gently. "You trusted him." "They put up my retirement fund." I choked out. "My entire life savings. For Lucas. And Lucas has defaulted on the first 3 payments," Sarah added, pointing to the red numbers. "The bank is preparing to seize your portfolio within 30 days. They haven't notified you because the notices are going to your parents' address." I stood up. I had to stand up because sitting felt like being crushed. They weren't just using me. They were cannibalizing me. They were willing to bankrupt me, to wipe out 15 years of my hard work, just to keep Lucas's illusion of success alive for a few more months. "That's a felony," I said. My voice sounded strange, robotic. "Fraud, identity theft, grand larceny," Arthur listed them off on his fingers. "We can file a police report right now. If we do, we can freeze the seizure. But Olivia, if you file this, your brother and likely your father will go to prison. Or at least face serious criminal charges." I walked to the window. I looked down at the city streets. I thought about the lobster thermidor. I thought about the Vanish comment. I thought about the pearls. They had stolen my past, the house, my present, my income, and now they were trying to steal my future, my retirement. "Do it," I said. "Are you sure?" Arthur asked. "Once we ring this bell, you can't unring it." I turned back to them. "They told me to vanish. I'm just granting their wish. But I'm taking my identity back with me." "Okay," Arthur nodded. "We'll file the police report immediately. That secures your assets. Now, what about the wedding?" A cold smile touched my lips. "The wedding. Right." I pulled out my phone. I paid the deposits for the venue, the caterer, the florist, and the band. The contracts are in my name. I'm the client. Not Lucas. Not my mother. "Legally," Arthur said, checking his notes, "that means you have the right to cancel." "I don't want to cancel just yet," I said. "If I cancel now, they'll have 24 hours to scramble, beg the Sterlings for money, and maybe salvage it. They'll spin a story that I'm crazy. So what's the plan?" I want to cancel the checks, I said. But I want to keep the reservations active in their minds until the very last second. I want them to show up. I want them to stand there in their tuxedos and gowns. That's ruthless, Sarah said, but she looked impressed. No, I corrected. That's business. They breached the contract of family. I'm just enforcing the penalties. I spent the next 2 hours on the phone. First, the bank. I reported the fraud. The account freeze was immediate. Second, the venue, the Gilded Hall. I spoke to the manager, a woman I had developed a rapport with. Hi, Brenda. It's Olivia. There's been a change of plans. I need to cancel the event for tomorrow. Oh my God, did they break up? Something like that, I said. But here's the thing. I don't want you to tell the groom yet. I'm legally dissolving the contract. I'm willing to forfeit the deposit. But I don't want you to set up. Keep the doors locked. Olivia, if they show up and the doors are locked, then tell them the person paying the bill pulled the plug. Refer them to me. I went down the list. The caterer. The florist. The band. To each one, I gave the same instruction: the money is gone. Do not deliver. If you deliver, you are doing so pro bono because I am not paying. The florist was the best. Honey, if the check is voided, those orchids are staying in the cooler. I don't work for charity. By 5 p.m., I had dismantled a $80,000 wedding with 5 phone calls. It was terrifyingly easy. It showed just how fragile Lucas's world was. It was a castle made of cards and I was the table. All I had to do was shake. I left Vance's office at sunset. I checked into a hotel downtown, the Palmer House. I didn't want to be at my apartment if they came looking for me. My phone had been on Do Not Disturb for hours. I finally checked it. 37 missed calls. 52 texts. Mom, did you pay the photographer? He's not answering. Lucas, where the hell are you? We need to go over the toast. Dad, pick up the phone, Olivia. They had no idea. They thought I was just sulking. They thought I was giving them the silent treatment and that eventually, I would cave and pay, just like I always did. I ordered room service, a burger and a glass of cheap red wine. It tasted better than the vintage bottle they were expecting. I slept like a baby. The morning of the wedding dawned gray and overcast. The forecast called for rain, but inside my hotel room, everything was calm. I woke up at 7 a.m. I stretched, feeling a strange lightness in my limbs. Usually on a day like this, I would be awake at 4 a.m., panicking about logistics. Did the napkins match? Was the limo on time? Did Lucas remember his vows? Today, I didn't care. I put on a crisp white blouse and black trousers. My power suit. I wasn't dressing for a wedding. I was dressing for a hostile takeover. My phone was vibrating so hard on the nightstand it was slowly moving across the surface. I picked it up. Mom. I swiped to answer. Where are you? She screamed. No hello. No good morning. Just panic. The hairdresser is here, and she says her credit card terminal is declining your card. We are trying to pay the balance for the bridesmaids. My card isn't working. I asked, feigning innocence. That's strange. The bank must have frozen it. Well, fix it. Call them. We have girls waiting with wet hair, Olivia. This is a disaster. I can't fix it, Mom, I said calmly. The bank freezes accounts when they detect suspicious activity. Like, say, a fraudulent $500,000 loan taken out against a stock portfolio. Silence. Absolute, dead silence on the other end. What did you say? Her voice was a whisper now. I said the bank knows, Mom. About the loan. About the forgery. They locked everything down. Including the wedding accounts. You told them. I had to. I couldn't let them seize my retirement, could I? You selfish little bitch, she shrieked. The mask fell off completely. You ruined everything. Fix this. Tell them it was a mistake. Tell them you authorized it. Lucas goes to jail if you don't. He should have thought of that before he traced my signature, I said. He's your brother. He did it for the family. We were going to pay it back once the company took off. With what money? The money from the Sterlings. Yes. Just hold on until the wedding is over. Once he marries Emily, everything will be fine. Just call the bank and tell them it's a misunderstanding. Please, Olivia. I'm begging you. Don't destroy us. Hearing her beg was a new experience. It was intoxicating. But it wasn't enough. I can't do that, Mom. It's out of my hands. It's a police matter now. Police? She sounded like she was choking. I'll see you at the venue, I said. I have one last gift to deliver. I hung up. I turned to the mirror. I applied my lipstick, a deep, blood red. War paint. I went down to the lobby. Arthur Vance was waiting for me. He looked sharp in a navy suit. Beside him were two men in plain clothes, but they had badges clipped to their belts. Detective Miller and Detective Rossi from the Fraud Division. Ready? Arthur asked. Ready, I said. We got into a black SUV. The drive to the Gilded Hall took 40 minutes. During the drive, my phone blew up. Lucas called. Dad called. Even Aunt Beatrice called, probably to warn me that Mom was on a rampage. I ignored them all. I watched the city roll by. I thought about the little girl who used to draw pictures of her family, always drawing herself slightly apart, holding a bag of money because she thought that was how she bought their smiles. No more, I told that little girl. You don't have to buy them anymore. We pulled up to the venue at 10:30 a.m. The ceremony was scheduled for 11 o'clock. The parking lot was full. The guests had arrived. The Sterling's luxury sedans were lined up in the front row. But something was wrong. People were standing outside the main doors. Confused. Milling about. The doors were locked. I saw the venue manager, Brenda, standing behind the glass doors, shaking her head at my father, who was pounding on the glass. My father, usually so passive, looked red-faced and sweaty. He was yelling something I couldn't hear. Lucas was there too. He was pacing back and forth in his tuxedo, on his phone, looking frantic. Showtime, I said to Arthur. The driver opened my door. I stepped out. The click of my heels on the pavement was the only sound I heard over the rushing of blood in my ears. Arthur flanked me on the left. The detectives flanked me on the right. We walked toward the crowd like a phalanx. Someone spotted me. It's Olivia. My father turned. He saw me. Relief washed over his face, followed instantly by rage. Olivia, he shouted, rushing toward me. Where have you been? Open the doors. Brenda says the check bounced. Fix this right now. Mr. Sterling is asking questions. He reached out to grab my arm. Detective Miller stepped in front of me, blocking him. Sir, step back. Dad froze. He looked at the badge. Who are you? Detective Miller, Fraud Division. We need to speak with Lucas Ellis. The color drained from my father's face. He looked from the detective to me. Livy, he whispered. What did you do? I vanished, I said, my voice cutting through the morning air. But I took my money with me. Just then, Lucas saw us. He stopped pacing. He stared at the police. He stared at me. And for the first time in his life, the golden child looked terrified. But the real show was about to begin. Because standing right behind Lucas, looking confused and holding her bouquet, was Emily. And next to her was her father, the billionaire. I walked past my father. I walked straight up to the glass doors. I signaled Brenda. She unlocked the doors. Only the wedding party inside, I announced to the confused guests. We have a legal matter to discuss. Legal matter? Mr. Sterling stepped forward, his voice booming. What the hell is going on here? Why is my daughter standing in a parking lot? Excellent question, Mr. Sterling, I said, turning to face him. If you'll join us inside, I have some documents regarding your future son-in-law's finances that you might find interesting. Lucas lunged at me. Shut up. Shut up, you jealous bitch. Detective Rossi caught him by the shoulder, spinning him around. Easy, son. She's lying. Lucas screamed, spit flying from his mouth. She's crazy. She's off her meds. I don't take meds, Lucas, I said calmly. But I do take receipts. I walked into the empty, unadorned hall. No flowers. No music. Just the harsh daylight streaming through the windows, illuminating the dust motes. It was the perfect setting for the truth. The echo of the empty hall was haunting. It was supposed to be filled with white orchids and a string quartet playing Vivaldi. Instead, it smelled of floor wax and impending doom. The core group filed in, the Sterlings, Mr. Sterling, his wife, and a tearful Emily, my parents, Lucas, and my entourage, Arthur and the detectives. My mother, Patricia, rushed in last, breathless. She saw the empty tables, the lack of tablecloths, the chairs stacked against the walls. Olivia, she shrieked, her voice echoing off the high ceilings. Where are the flowers? Where is the food? You cancelled it. You actually cancelled it. I didn't pay for it, I corrected her. There's a difference. You monster. She charged at me, her hand raised to slap. I didn't flinch. I didn't have to. Detective Miller stepped in again, his presence a wall of authority. Ma'am, I wouldn't do that. Patricia stopped, chest heaving. She glared at me with hatred so pure it almost scorched my skin. I gave birth to you. How could you shame us like this? You told me to vanish, I reminded her. I'm just following instructions. What is going on? Mr. Sterling demanded. He was a man used to command, and his patience was gone. He looked at the empty hall, then at Lucas. Lucas, you told me this was all paid for. You told me you wired the funds yourself. Lucas was sweating profusely now. He tugged at his collar. I did. It's a bank error. Olivia is sabotaging me. She's jealous because she's alone and miserable. Arthur, I said. Arthur Vance stepped forward. He placed a briefcase on one of the bare tables and clicked it open. The sound was like a gunshot in the silence. He pulled out the loan application. The forensic report. The forged checks. Mr. Sterling, Arthur said, his voice professional and smooth. My name is Arthur Vance. I represent Olivia Ellis. This is not a bank error. This is a portfolio of evidence regarding systematic fraud, embezzlement, and identity theft committed by Lucas Ellis and facilitated by Robert and Patricia Ellis. Lies. Dad shouted. Don't listen to him. Mr. Sterling ignored my father. He walked over to the table. He picked up the loan application. He put on his reading glasses. The room held its breath. Emily was sobbing softly. Lucas. What is this? You said you had investors. I do. Lucas pleaded, grabbing her hand. She pulled away. I do. It's just complicated. Liquidity issues. Startups are messy, you know that. He stole $500,000 from his sister's retirement fund, Arthur said clearly. He forged her signature. He also mortgaged his parents' home, which Olivia paid for to the hilt. He is currently $2 million in debt. Mr. Sterling looked up from the papers. His face was a mask of cold fury. $2 million, he repeated. And, Arthur added, pulling out another sheet. We ran a background check on his ventures. They are shell companies. They don't exist. He has no employees. No product. No revenue. He's been living off his sister and gambling the rest. Gambling? Mom whispered. She looked at Lucas. You said you were investing in crypto. Online poker, I said. I saw the statements, Mom. He lost 40 grand last month alone. Lucas looked cornered. He looked at his parents, then at the Sterlings. The charm was gone. The facade was crumbling. It was an investment. Lucas yelled. I was going to win it back. I just needed a lucky break. And this marriage. He stopped. This marriage was the lucky break. Mr. Sterling finished for him. His voice was dangerously quiet. You were marrying my daughter to pay your gambling debts. No. I love her. Lucas cried, but his eyes darted to the exit. He tried to get me to sign a prenup, Emily said, her voice shaking. But the prenup said he would get half of my trust fund if we divorced after 1 year. Standard procedure. Lucas insisted. Predatory behavior, Arthur corrected. Mr. Sterling dropped the papers on the table. He turned to Emily. We're leaving. Daddy? Now, Emily. The wedding is off. No. Mom screamed. She threw herself at Mr. Sterling's feet, literally threw herself. Please. Don't go. We can explain. Lucas is a genius, he just has bad luck. Olivia is lying, these papers are fake. Get off me, Mr. Sterling said, stepping back in disgust. He looked at my father. You knew about this? You knew he was a fraud? Dad couldn't meet his eyes. He looked at the floor. You people are sick, Mr. Sterling spat. He put his arm around Emily. Let's go. Emily. Lucas shouted, running after her. Detective Rossi blocked his path. You're not going anywhere, Mr. Ellis. We have a warrant for your arrest. Arrest? Lucas squeaked. For identity theft, bank fraud, and wire fraud. Class 2 felonies. The detective pulled out a pair of handcuffs. They jingled metallically. The sound of the handcuffs clicking onto Lucas's wrists was the sweetest music I had ever heard. Better than any orchestra. Mom. Dad. Do something. Lucas wailed as they turned him around. Mom was sobbing on the floor. Dad was leaning against the wall, clutching his chest, looking gray. I stood in the center of the chaos, perfectly still. I looked at Lucas. He looked back at me, his eyes full of fear and hatred. Why, he asked. Why did you do this? We're family. No, Lucas, I said softly. I was family. You were a parasite. I just called the exterminator. The police led Lucas out the side door to avoid the crowd of guests in the parking lot, but the commotion was impossible to hide. My mother was wailing loud enough to wake the dead. Mr. Sterling stopped at the door. He turned back to look at me. You saved my daughter from a nightmare, he said. I don't know how to thank you. Just make sure she finds someone who loves her, not her wallet, I said. He nodded, tipped his head respectfully, and led a weeping Emily out to their car. I was left alone in the hall with my parents and Arthur. My mother stopped crying. She stood up, wiping her mascara-streaked face. She looked at the empty doorway where her golden child had just been dragged away in chains. Then she turned slowly to face me. If looks could kill, I would have been vaporized. "Are you happy?" she whispered. "You destroyed him. You destroyed your own brother." "He destroyed himself, Mom. I just stopped paying for the demolition." "You are dead to me," she hissed. "I have no daughter. You are a cold, heartless, vindictive bitch. I hope you die alone with your money." "I might die alone," I said, "but I won't die in debt. And I won't die being used." "Get out," my father said. His voice was weak, trembling. "Get out of our lives." "Gladly," I said. "But first, a few housekeeping items." I nodded to Arthur. "Mr. and Mrs. Ellis," Arthur said. "Since you co-signed the fraudulent loan, well, Robert did, and Patricia was aware of the funds, you are complicit. The bank will be foreclosing on your home to recoup the losses. The house Olivia paid for. It's gone." "What?" Dad gasped. "Also," Arthur continued, "Olivia is suing you for the return of the $215,000 documented in her ledger, citing undue influence and elder financial abuse, though in this case, it's filial financial abuse. We have a strong case." "You're suing us?" Mom looked like she was going to faint. "I'm getting my refund," I said. I turned and walked toward the door. The sunlight outside was blinding. "Olivia!" Mom screamed one last time. "You can't leave us like this. We're old. We have nowhere to go." I stopped. I didn't turn around. "You should have thought of that," I said, "before you told me to vanish." I walked out into the parking lot. The guests were dispersing, whispering, pointing. I ignored them all. I got into the SUV. "Where to?" the driver asked. "The airport," I said. "I have a flight to Paris to catch." I didn't really have a flight to Paris. Not yet. But I was going to buy one. First class. One way. As we drove away, I looked back at the venue in the rearview mirror. I saw my parents stumbling out the front doors, looking small and defeated. I felt a tear slide down my cheek. It wasn't for them. It was for the years I had lost. It was for the little girl who tried so hard to be good. I wiped the tear away. The little girl was gone. The woman who remained was free. I took a deep breath. The air tasted like rain and freedom. The adrenaline that had sustained me through the wedding cancellation and the police raid began to fade about an hour after I checked back into the Palmer House Hotel. It was replaced by a hollow, vibrating silence. I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the Chicago skyline, waiting for the guilt to hit me. I waited for that familiar, crushing weight that usually accompanied any act of defiance against my mother. But it didn't come. Instead, my phone rang. It wasn't my parents'. It was a number I didn't recognize, but the area code was local. I picked it up, my instincts sharp. "This is Olivia. Ms. Ellis." The voice was gravelly, polite, but with an underlying edge that made the hair on my arms stand up. "My name is Mr. Russo. I'm an associate of your brother's business partners." My blood ran cold. The forensic accountant, Sarah, had mentioned massive unexplained cash withdrawals and deposits to offshore accounts, but we had assumed it was online gambling sites. "I don't know who you are," I said, keeping my voice steady. "But my brother is currently in police custody. If you have business with him, I suggest you contact the precinct." There was a dry chuckle on the other end. "We heard about the wedding. Unfortunate. Very dramatic. But here is the thing, Ms. Ellis. Your brother borrowed a significant sum from us. $50,000 to be precise. He used it to pay for a diamond ring. He told us his sister, that would be you, was the guarantor. He gave us your address. Your office address. And your parents' home address. I stood up, walking to the window, my hand gripping the phone tight. This was the third twist. The one I hadn't fully anticipated. Lucas hadn't just defrauded the bank, he had borrowed from loan sharks. He had leveraged my safety and our parents' safety against his gambling debts. I didn't sign anything with you, I said. And I have a team of lawyers and detectives currently reviewing every inch of his financial life. If you come near me, or my place of employment, you will be added to the RICO case they are building. Silence. It stretched for 10 seconds. You're a tough lady, Mr. Russo said. I respect that. Lucas said you were a pushover. He said you were a cash cow. Seems he was wrong about a lot of things. He was, I said. We won't bother you, Ms. Ellis. We know better than to mess with the person holding the matches. But your parents, they still live at the address on file, correct? The house that is currently, how do I put this, in dispute. That's between you and them, I said. I have no relationship with those people. Understood. Have a nice day. The line went dead. I immediately called Detective Miller. I told him about the call. I gave him the number. I did my duty as a citizen. But I didn't call my parents. 2 hours later, my phone blew up again. This time, it was my mother. She left a voicemail. I didn't answer, but I listened to the recording. Olivia. Olivia, pick up. There are men here. 2 men in suits, they're sitting on the porch. They say they're waiting for Lucas to come home. They say he owes them 50 grand. We called the police but they left before the squad car arrived and now they're back. Olivia, I'm scared. Your father is having chest pains. You have money, pay them. Just pay them so they leave us alone. It's your fault Lucas is in jail and can't handle this. You have to fix it. I deleted the voicemail. It was harsh. I know some of you listening might think I'm a monster for leaving my elderly parents to deal with loan sharks. But you have to remember, they created the monster. They fed the monster. They insisted the monster was a genius businessman, while he was dragging them into the sewer. If I paid Mr. Russo, I would be doing exactly what I had done for 15 years, enabling. I would be teaching them that no matter how big the fire, Olivia would bring the hose. Not this time. Let them feel the heat. That evening, I met Arthur Vance for dinner at a steakhouse. He looked exhausted but triumphant. The DA is throwing the book at him, Arthur said, cutting into his ribeye. The fraud against the bank is bad enough, but because he used the U.S. mail to send some of the forged documents, they're tacking on mail fraud. And since he crossed state lines to meet with investors for his fake company, well, he's looking at 5 to 10 years. And the parents? I asked. They aren't being charged criminally yet, Arthur said. Since they claim they were duped by Lucas too. But civilly? They are ruined. The bank has already initiated foreclosure proceedings on the house to recoup the fraudulent loan. Your lawsuit for the $215,000 is just the icing on the cake. They will be bankrupt within 90 days. I took a sip of wine. It was a 1998 vintage. The same year Lucas dropped out of college the first time. It tasted like justice. I want to buy the pearls, I said suddenly. Arthur looked up. The necklace? Yes. I want you to find the pawn shop Mom sold them to. I want to buy them back. Use my account. Whatever it costs. Olivia, that's sentimental. I thought we were being purely business. That necklace represents the only person in that family who didn't look at me and see a dollar sign, I said. It's the only asset I actually care about. Arthur nodded. I'll put an investigator on it in the morning. I went back to my hotel room. I felt lighter. The investor twist, the loan sharks, had been the final nail in the coffin of my guilt. Lucas had been willing to let violent men come to my door to collect his debts. He had sold my safety for a poker game. I slept that night without dreams. For the first time in years, I wasn't worrying about a crisis. The crisis had happened. The bomb had gone off. And I was the only one standing in the blast radius who was wearing a bomb suit. 3 days later, I received a visitor at the hotel. I had expected it to be my mother, screaming, or perhaps a process server. It was Emily. She looked terrible. Her eyes were swollen, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing sweatpants. She looked like a child who had seen a ghost. "Can I come in?" she asked, her voice trembling. I stepped aside. "Of course." She sat on the sofa, clutching her purse. She refused the water I offered. "I went to see him," she whispered. "In jail. My dad told me not to, but I had to hear it from him. I had to look him in the eye." "And?" I asked, sitting across from her. He blamed you," Emily said, looking up at me with disbelief. "He didn't apologize. He didn't ask how I was. He just kept ranting about how you were jealous, how you set him up, how you were trying to steal his inheritance. He asked me to ask my dad for bail money. He said if I loved him, I would get him out so he could fix this." I nodded. "That sounds like Lucas. He's a sociopath," she said, the realization landing heavy in the room. "He really believes he's the victim. He thinks the world owes him everything. He was raised to believe that," I said. "My parents spent 30 years building that altar for him." Emily opened her purse. She pulled out a small, crumpled piece of paper. It was an ultrasound image. My breath hitched. "Emily. I'm 8 weeks," she said, tears spilling over. "I found out the morning of the wedding. I was going to surprise him at the reception. I was going to give him a onesie that said, 'Daddy's little venture capitalist,' or something stupid like that." She let out a harsh, jagged laugh. "If you hadn't stopped that wedding," she said, looking me dead in the eye, "I would be legally tied to him. His debt would have become my debt. My father's money would have been drained. And this baby would have been born into a war zone." She reached out and took my hand. Her grip was strong. "You didn't just save my bank account, Olivia. You saved my life. And you saved this kid's life. I'm going to raise it alone. My dad is going to help. But we are never, ever letting Lucas near this child." I felt a lump in my throat. I had thought my revenge was just about balancing the ledger. I hadn't realized I was performing a rescue operation. "I'm glad," I said. "He would have used the child, Emily. Just like he used me. Just like he used our parents." "I know," she said. "Thank you. For being the bad guy. Everyone thinks you're the villain, you know. Your parents are posting all over Facebook about how you abandoned them. But I know the truth. You're the hero." After Emily left, I felt a shift. The anger that had fueled me was gone. It was replaced by a profound sense of closure. The golden child was rotting in a cell, unable to make bail because his parents were broke and his fiancé had seen the light. The cycle of abuse was broken. It wouldn't extend to the next generation. That afternoon, Arthur called. "We found the necklace," he said. "It was at a pawn shop on the south side. Your mother got $1,200 for it." "Buy it," I said. "Already done. It's on my desk. Also, the foreclosure notice was served to your parents this morning. They have 30 days to vacate." "Do they know about the auction?" "Yes. They are trying to raise funds, but with their credit destroyed and the lawsuit pending, nobody will lend to them. They called me, actually. Your father asked if you would buy the house and rent it back to them." I laughed. A dry, humorless sound. What did you tell him? I told him that my client is looking for investment properties in Europe, not Illinois. And that any communication must go through me. Perfect. The next few weeks were a blur of legal paperwork. I gave a deposition against Lucas. I provided every receipt, every email, every text message. I watched the prosecutors build a fortress of evidence around him. I also started looking for apartments. Not in Chicago. I had always wanted to live in Paris. When I was 20, I had been accepted into a study abroad program, but Mom had guilted me into staying home because Lucas was going through a hard time. He had failed a semester of community college. I had stayed. I had worked. Now, at 34, with a substantial settlement coming from the liquidation of my parents' assets, whatever was left after the bank took their share, and my own savings secured, I realized there was nothing keeping me here. The job? I could consult remotely. I was a COO. I could run logistics from the moon if the Wi-Fi was good. The family. I didn't have one anymore. I booked a ticket. One way. Charles de Gaulle. But there was one last thing I had to do. I had to see the house one last time. Not to save it, but to say goodbye. The day of the eviction was rainy. It seemed fitting. The universe was washing the slate clean. I parked my rental car down the street, far enough away that they wouldn't see me, but close enough to watch. A moving truck was parked in the driveway. It wasn't a professional service. It was a U-Haul. My father was struggling to lift a sofa onto the ramp. He looked 20 years older than he had a month ago. His posture was defeated, his movements slow and painful. My mother was carrying boxes, shouting directions at him, but her voice lacked its usual fire. It was shrill, desperate. I watched them. These people who had given me life and then consumed it. I saw a neighbor walk by, Mrs. Higgins. She stopped and said something to my mother. My mother gestured wildly, pointing at the house, then playing the victim. I could imagine the words, "My ungrateful daughter threw us out after all we did for her." Mrs. Higgins just shook her head and walked away. The neighborhood knew. The police raid, the loan sharks on the porch, the rumors, small towns and suburbs talk. The facade of the perfect Ellis family was gone. They were exposed as frauds. I saw Beatrice's car pull up. My heart squeezed. Beatrice got out. She walked up to my mother. They exchanged words. My mother pointed a finger in Beatrice's face. Beatrice slapped her hand away. It was the first time I had ever seen Beatrice fight back. Beatrice handed my father an envelope, cash, probably, for a motel, and then walked back to her car. She didn't help them move. She didn't offer them a room. She had drawn her line too. I picked up my phone and texted Beatrice. "Me, I see you." "Beatrice, I know you're watching, Olivia. Don't come over here. It's not worth it." "Me, I'm not coming. I just wanted to make sure they didn't hurt you." "Beatrice, they can't hurt anyone anymore. They have no power. I gave them enough for 3 nights at the Motel 6. After that, they are on their own. They have to apply for senior housing." "Me, you're a good sister, Aunt B. Better than she deserves." "Beatrice, go to Paris, honey. Don't look back." I watched as the sheriff's deputy arrived to lock the property. My parents came out of the house for the last time. My mother was clutching a vase, probably the one thing she refused to sell. My father looked back at the house, tears streaming down his face. The house I had bought. The house I had saved. The house they had stolen and then lost. It stood there, empty and gray in the rain. A monument to greed. I felt a vibration in my pocket. It was an email notification from Arthur. Subject, settlement and Lucas update Olivia, Lucas took a plea deal this morning. 5 years in federal prison. He will be eligible for parole in 3. He admitted to the fraud. Your parents have declared Chapter 7 bankruptcy. The bank will auction the house next Tuesday. The proceeds from the auction will cover the bank's loan first. Any remainder will go toward your lawsuit settlement, though I expect it will be minimal. However, your stock portfolio has been released and is fully back in your control. You are free. I put the phone down. I watched the U-Haul pull away. My parents were driving into a future of uncertainty, poverty, and loneliness. A future they had crafted brick by brick. I started my car. I didn't follow them. I turned the wheel in the opposite direction, toward O'Hare International Airport. I reached into the passenger seat and opened the small velvet box Arthur had given me. Inside lay Grandma's pearls. They shone softly in the gray light. I took them out and fastened them around my neck. The cool weight of them felt like a hug. We did it, Grandma, I whispered. I'm the shark now. I drove away. I didn't look in the rearview mirror. There was nothing behind me but ghosts. The morning light in Paris is different. It's softer, like it's filtered through old lace. I sat at a small round table at a café in the 6th arrondissement, a croissant flaking apart on my plate, and a steaming café crème in front of me. My laptop was open, but I wasn't looking at spreadsheets of frozen food logistics. I was looking at a design for my own consulting firm, Ellis Operations. I had launched it 6 months ago. It turns out, when you aren't spending 40% of your energy managing a dysfunctional family, and 50% of your income bailing them out, you have a lot of resources left over to build an empire. My phone buzzed. A WhatsApp video call from Emily. I answered. Her face filled the screen, tired but radiant. She was holding a chubby, drooling baby with bright blue eyes. Say hi to Auntie Olivia. Emily cooed, waving the baby's hand. Hi, Leo, I smiled. He was beautiful. And he looked nothing like Lucas. He looked like a clean slate. How is he? I asked. Teething, Emily groaned. But my dad is babysitting tonight so I can sleep. How is Paris? Did you meet that architect yet? I glanced over at the counter where Jean-Luc, a charming landscape architect I had met at a gallery opening, was ordering his espresso. He caught my eye and winked. Maybe, I grinned. You look happy, Liv, Emily said softly. You look light. I am, I said. For the first time in my life, I'm not carrying anyone else's baggage. We chatted for a few more minutes before she had to go. I closed the laptop and leaned back, watching the Parisians walk by. I hadn't spoken to my parents in a year. I heard updates through Aunt Beatrice, who I flew out to visit me last Christmas. Mom and Dad were living in a small, state-subsidized senior apartment in Ohio. Dad was working as a greeter at Walmart to supplement their Social Security. Mom had become a recluse, too embarrassed to show her face at her old church or bridge club. They spent their days blaming everyone else for their fall, the bank, the lawyers, me. Especially me. They still told anyone who would listen that I had stolen their house. But nobody listened anymore. Lucas was in a minimum security facility in Kentucky. Beatrice said he had found Jesus and was writing a memoir about his persecution. I wished him well. I wished him healing. But I would never read his book. I touched the pearls at my throat. The journey here hadn't been easy. There were nights I woke up crying, missing the family I wished I had, mourning the parents who should have loved me. It's a phantom limb pain, you ache for something that was never really there. But then I would look at my bank account. I would look at my passport. I would look at the peace in my life. I realized that the injustice was the price of admission to this life. The snap was the turning point. And the receipts were the map out of hell. I took a sip of my coffee. It was bitter and rich. My parents mocked me. They said the greatest gift is you vanishing. They were right. It was the greatest gift. But it wasn't a gift for Lucas. It was a gift for me. I vanished from their drama. I vanished from their manipulation. I vanished from their debts. And in vanishing, I found myself. I paid the check, with my own money, for my own pleasure. I stood up, wrapped my scarf around my neck, and walked out into the streets of Paris. The air was crisp. The possibilities were endless. My name is Olivia Ellis. I am not a provider. I am not a victim. I am the architect of my own life. And business is booming. Thank you for listening to my story. It's been a long journey from that wedding venue to this cafe in Paris. I hope my experience gives you the courage to set your own boundaries, to keep your own receipts, and to walk away from anyone who treats you like an option instead of a priority. And if you have a story of your own, share it. We are stronger together. Don't forget to check out the other videos on the channel. There are so many stories of resilience waiting for you.